Questions for Goode June 10, 2015, on Secret Space Program Meetings. Q1. On the morning of June 5 you say you attended a conference meeting concerning the SSP Alliance Council. Can you describe what the council is and what SSP groups make it up? The SSP Alliance Council is a group of leaders from various levels of battalions, regiments, divisions, wings and corps from each of the allied groups that make up the alliance. There are a large number of members of what was the Solar Warden Project and defectors from what is referred to as the ICC, which is made up of many corporate groups, arms with one head, remaining Dark Fleet members and members of several military Black Ops programs including some lower-tech groups that were invited into the alliance more recently. The majority of personnel were drafted from MyLab programs or were born off-world, and when they came of age were told their career path. This SSP Alliance Council is a tenuous alliance of leaders who have cliques and sub-factions that do not completely trust one another. There is an agreement that they all meet and agree on actions under certain rules of engagement and codes of ethics established by a committee. As we know from what occurred with the two rogue attacks against an ICC Mars asset and joint secret Earth government and ET base on Earth, the two atrocities, these rules of engagement are not always followed. This seems to also be true of the loosely organized Earth-based alliance where some factions are making deals with the opposition that are not sanctioned by other members. Q2. Please describe who else attended the council meeting in terms of their affiliations, status, etc. The SSP Alliance Council was present as were a large number of secret Earth government, syndicate defectors who are under the Off-World Witness Protection Program, along with their families. There were also representatives from several Earth-based alliance groups present. This was an unusual meeting because of the types of people that were present. There was a presentation of the information provided to the Alliance Council by the defectors and what they would testify to. The Earth-based alliance then presented a large amount of information that they had just obtained through hacking and espionage from Western governments, US and EU. Once this presentation was over in the Earth-based alliance and the defectors, witnesses were escorted to their next part and their activities. The room was secured and Raw-Tier appeared briefly to deliver a message that was directly related to the material and topics covered before the brief intermission when the other participants were escorted out of the room. Once again in the room directly next to the one we were in there was another group of approximately 50-60 civilians who were brought up for a conference and given a tour. Q3. Where was the SSP Alliance Council meeting held, and please describe how you were taken there and returned. This council meeting was also held at the LOC, Lunar Operations Command, in the VIP area where most people are not permitted to enter. It is much nicer and ornate than the rest of the base. I was picked up and delivered back home in the same fashion that has become the SOP after the SSP Alliance no longer picked me up in my backyard in their small 5-person shuttles. There had been a MUFON report that was quite detailed that was filled out the night of one of the meetings and I was informed that some agency operatives had moved into nearby rental properties to surveil the activities of my property. Since that time the orb beings that are blue to indigo in color and range in size from a golf ball to a beach ball will arrive through the walls of my bedroom and zigzag around until I get out of bed and indicate that I am ready for the journey. The orb being then zips to within 18 inches of my chest and then rapidly expands to where I am floating in the center. At that point the orb being zips through the wall of my room and I am at my destination in moments, almost instantaneous. In this case it took me to the moon where the LOC is located, then took me to a sphere to have a short meeting with Raw-Tier and then back to my room where the clock would show I had been gone only a few minutes or so. It took a while to get used to this method of travel because when they first zip off you feel time, space distort and sort of smear, blur. Korean Blue Sphere, graphic depiction of Corey being taken by Blue Sphere to Lunar Operations Command, Q4. Can you describe how the meeting was conducted? Was there an agenda followed, a chairperson presiding, minutes taken, etc.? This meeting was different than the normal meeting. Usually I am dropped off by the orb being in a closed room and then am greeted by the person now known as Lieutenant Call Gonzalez, not his actual name. As explained, He is the SSP Alliance Council's liaison to myself, and he too has had personal contact with the Blue Avians for almost the exact amount of time I have. This made him the SSP Alliance's natural choice to be the Sphere Being Alliance delegate. He was contacted by the Blue Avians and given my name directly by them as their choice for their delegate. Since that time we sort of report to each other, and he pretty much runs the council meetings even though most of the people in the room outrank him. He normally controls the cadence of the meetings and what is covered in which order on the agenda list. In this last meeting he somewhat did this, but there was another SSP Alliance Council member who had been working with the two guest groups who were presenting a lot of the information. He and I were mainly observing during this part of the meeting. Q5. Was the meeting held in a conference-like setting around a table, theater-like setting with a panel in front of an audience, or some other format? There are two very large theater-style conference rooms in the VIP area of the lock that I have seen. One of them is usually occupied by a civilian conference. I have not been briefed on exactly what goes on in those meetings yet. The council meets in the next room over, which is identical. I do not know exactly how many swivel seats are in the room, but we have had approximately 300 people in one meeting at one time. There is no podium, and wherever you stand and if you are the one speaking, your voice carries to every square inch of the room via some unseen technology. There are what look to be extremely large screens that resemble the smart glass pads that I have described in the past. They have not been used so far in our presentations. Q6. In your report of the June 5 meeting you say that the Earth-based alliance has accumulated a lot of personal data of individuals for future war crimes trials through hacking of Western government personnel databases. Can you elaborate on who comprises the Earth-based alliance, and whether the June 4 announcement that 4 million federal workers' files were hacked in December 2014 is part of this Earth alliance operation? This information came from a series of hacks and inside operations. It was stated that most of the information was fresh intelligence that had just been obtained. It was that same day after the meetings that I heard about some massive hacking breaches in the US during the time frame you mentioned. I'm certain that was a part of the data they had obtained, but I also have the feeling there was much more that they had gotten a hold of more recently from both the US and the EU. Q7. You have recently described yourself as a Blue Avian delegate to the council meeting. Please describe what that means and whether the Blue Avians have more than one delegate at meetings and or attend themselves. Sphere Alliance logo. That was a conversation on Facebook after I uploaded a new graphic that I created that said Blue Avian delegate. I am actually considered a Sphere Being Alliance delegate, as strange as that sounds. This means that I speak on their behalf at the ET Super Federation meetings, which the Sphere Beings will not openly attend or take part in, and I also end up doing what amounts to being an interpreter when the Blue Avians are present at a SSP Alliance Council meeting. They will communicate directly to me via telepathy, and I then repeat word for word what they want me to communicate to the members. When I speak on my own, I am speaking only on my own behalf and from my own opinions and biases. I am the only delegate they choose to have communicating for them at the present. There have been times when they have communicated information through Gonzalez, but this was mainly prior to me being named the delegate by the Blue Avians. He is still in contact with the Blue Avians and has his own relationship with them apart from my own. Q8. In appointing you to be a delegate, does that mean that the SSP Alliance Council recognizes that you provide a perspective for the common interests of private individuals, humanity in general, that otherwise would not be adequately represented at council meetings? No, I only speak on behalf of the Sphere Being Alliance. At the ET Super Federation conferences there are Earth delegates that are people that rotate in from the many secret Earth government groups and syndicates, as well as other groups that I am not familiar with. These people, who are the self-appointed elites, speak on all of our behalf while they are standing in as the Earth delegate. The SSP Alliance provides e-support, 3 intuitive empaths, for the Sphere Alliance delegate, as well as is allowed to stand one council member behind the seated delegate. This is the allowed configuration of all delegate seats. The delegate sits on an elevated chair, 3 E's are in lower chairs in front and to the side of the delegate, and the councillor stands to the back of the delegate. Gonzalez has been appointed the SSP Alliance delegate, but the Super Federation group has not recognized them. The ET groups barely tolerate two humans sitting in delegation roles on the floor as it is, therefore Gonzalez is in the position of standing behind me during the conferences. The problem with this is that at these conferences there is a standard language that is spoken. I assume that most of the ETs know this language, but there is also a being doing a strange sign language whenever another delegate is speaking. When sitting in the chair it acts as a translator and you understand what is being said. All of the times I previously worked in e-support I never understood what it was being said. I was invited to speak at the first conference we were invited to. I stood up at the front and spoke for a short time, and afterward the SSP Alliance support team asked me what I was saying. I thought I was speaking English, but they told me I was speaking that weird monotone ET language and they didn't understand a word. Because they have to rely on me to report accurately and truthfully on what was discussed, the SSP Alliance Council is not at all happy that their delegate is not allowed a chair. Q9. You have also revealed that you attended a June 7th meeting with the Super Federation Conference of Aligned Human-like ETs. Can you describe some of the races comprising the human-looking ETs? There are normally at most 40 groups at these conferences. Recently there have been over 60 groups and they have added seats to a point that the floor has become very crowded. The same groups are present as I described from my audio interview that is on my YouTube channel. There are so many it's hard to know where to start. There are people from the 3-4 foot tall to 12 foot tall range. There are people with olive green skin as well as pumpkin orange, light blue, mocha brown and all other shades of skin colors and textures. One that stands out that sits close by is tall skinny group with white shiny skin, glistens, white cotton-like hair and pretty much red eyes that seem to radiate some sort of light or energy. They wear all white clothing with no seams that is skin tight. There are some that look very much like we do but with slightly larger eyes who are taller, and some that are around the 5 foot 5 inch height with short black military-like haircuts with tan skin and very dense body structure, weigh much more than they appear to. I am supposed to work with a well-known and very talented portrait artist sometime soon to do some renderings of these beings. I haven't heard from the person directly who is said to be organizing this project, but I did hear from a third party just today that it appears they have scheduled time for me to spend time with this portrait artist in the last week of June. It will certainly be nice to get some visual accurate depictions of some of these beings and craft sometime soon. Q10. Can you describe the logistics of the June 7th meeting in terms of how the meeting was conducted? Was an agenda followed? Was there a chairperson presiding, minutes taken, and where was it held? These meetings are extremely formal. Each group has a horseshoe-shaped area where there is a main seat for the delegate and 3 lower seats for their support staff, e-support, as well as a place where one person is allowed to stand behind them as an advisor. There is a short railing that semicircles around the front of the horseshoe seating area that comes up to about chin level of the e-support staff sitting in front. The room slightly angles down towards the front from all directions to an area that has a table that leads to the small stage where the speaker stands. There is a lower stage where another person stands and does a strange type of sign language. There is one race who always seems to be assigned as helpers who hand out the smart glass pads, no outside technology is brought in, and also roam around during the meetings as if they are doing certain tasks. Other than that, the proceedings seem to manage themselves in a very smooth and orderly fashion. Each group has an opportunity to stand and speak or pass on taking the stage. The meetings are automatically recorded into their database that is accessible through the smart glass pads. At the end of the conference everyone files out of the conference room in an orderly fashion and into the large foyer hall where they will either stop and communicate among themselves or move directly towards the bays where their craft are docked to leave the proceedings. They have obviously been doing this for quite some time and the conferences require little if any management. The conferences are held in a diplomatic station that is extremely large. It sits at a point beyond the rocky planets and in the plane of the gas giants and is in some sort of temporal bubble. When in a craft or looking out the windows of the large windows in the foyer it looks pitch black. You cannot see any stars, planets or the sun whatsoever. It was explained that this was a protected pocket in space, time where these groups meet in our Sol system. The agenda is always related to the grand experiment occurring on Earth or diplomatic relations between the member races. Q11. Was the Super Federation conference meeting held in a conference-like setting around a table, theater-like setting with the panel in front of an audience, or some other format? What was the mode of communication? The conferences are carried out in the same manner every time as described above. The delegate who is speaking at the time is on the stage where they all speak this common language. It is a dull monotone-sounding language with no pitches or fluctuations in tones at all. There is always a person standing nearby doing a type of sign language. There is some telepathic contact at times, but since it is a point-to-point contact communication between two beings, it doesn't seem to be occurring constantly from the delegate on the stage anyway. Q12. At the June 7th meeting you have reported that several ET groups want to evacuate underground bases due to a lot of attacks and infighting. You say that a decision was made as a result of a Blue Avian recommendation, to give them humanitarian aid but not allow them to evacuate. Do these bases belong primarily to Dracos, Greys, and other negative STS groups and their Earth allies? Do you have insights into why these ET groups were allowed to continue having a presence on Earth, for example, possible use of WMD on their departure? Some of them belong to these groups. Most of these bases are embassies of the ETs that were present at the Super Federation conference or were bases of ETs that were here observing the planet and its ecosystem and not interfering. Others were underground bases in cities that belong to ancient Earth breakaway civilizations that have worked with and manipulated the current era elites and had treaties with the Draco Alliance. There is quite a complicated system of beings that cooperate on some level below the surface of the Earth and its oceans and going down quite some depth into the honeycomb structure of the planet. It's not that these groups were not allowed to continue to have a presence on Earth, they were prevented from fleeing from the Earth recently by a barrier that is in place further out around the planet as well as another outer barrier that keeps these beings inside the Sol system until certain events unfold. The Earth elite and these ETs still have some powerful weapons but they have seemed to have focused on using them on each other in recent months. This made the SSP Alliance more than happy and they were watching these groups destroy one another's embassies, bases up until the point of this recent conference where certain groups called a ceasefire and asked to be allowed to enter the Earth's atmosphere to retrieve the survivors from their embassies. They were denied entry but were offered humanitarian aid, Sphere Alliance insisted, and rescue, where these beings and groups would be placed in protective custody and cared for until certain events unfold. This is hard for some to understand from a third density perspective. This is done according to natural law in sixth density perspective that happens to coincide with certain information from the Law of One series. I am no scholar of the Law of One material by any means but a couple quotes were pointed out to me to try to help the SSP Alliance and myself understand how these sixth density beings think, which is completely foreign to how we process things currently in third density. 42.7 To a mind/body/spirit complex which is starving, the appropriate response is the feeding of the body. You may extrapolate from this. 89.30 Questioner. Would Ra's attitude toward the same unharvestable entities be different at this nexus than at the time of harvests of third density? Ra. I am Ra. Not substantially. To those who wish to sleep we could only offer those comforts designed for the sleeping. Service is only possible to the extent it is requested. We were ready to serve in whatever way we could. This still seems satisfactory as a means of dealing with other cells in third density. It is our feeling that to be each entity which one attempts to serve is to simplify the grasp of what service is necessary or possible. 81.24 Questioner. So that I can just get a little idea of what I am talking about, what are the limits of Ra's travel in the sense of directly experiencing or seeing the activities of various places? Is it solely within this galaxy, and if so, how much of this galaxy? Or does it include some other galaxies? Ra. I am Ra. Although it would be possible for us to move at will throughout the creation within this logos, that is to say, The Milky Way galaxy, so-called, we have moved where we were called to service, these locations being, shall we say, local and including Alpha Centauri, planets of your solar system which you call the Sun, Cepheus, and Zeta Reticuli. To these sublogoi we have come, having been called. Q13. You say that at this June 7th meeting, the Council of 200 arranged to be on the delegation rotation once again. This group of global elites presumably still has great power and access to WMD, even though their ET overlords, Royal Dracos, have abandoned them. Is their continued participation in these meetings due to them holding the Earth's population to ransom through the threat of global destruction, and or their assistance in allowing the full disclosure event happen, or for some other reason? I do not have an answer for you that will not be part speculation in this case. There are many groups among the elites, cabal of which this committee is just one. They are obviously a group with a lot of pull. There are other groups that I would think have just as much pull. This is more of a heavy motivation of this group that was once heavily connected to the Draco Alliance, if not still, and was present at the meeting between the Sphere-Being Alliance delegate, myself, and the Draco White Royal that was reported prior. For some reason they are heavily motivated to call in favors or do whatever it takes to be present in high-profile decision-making conferences. I wouldn't want to speculate further than this on what is going on in their group. I am told that they used to be a larger committee. If they have seen a loss in stature and power, I could see how they would want to prevent any further degradation of their stature. Q14. What is your precise role at these alliance meetings? Do you provide a point of view on behalf of humanity in general? Do you mainly listen to information being shared by the different SSPs, and or do you pass on information on behalf of the Blue Avians to the SSPs, or is it to report back to the general public through reports and responses and to questions as you are doing now? I mostly listen and less directly spoken to. I do not speak for humanity, or do I ever presume to. When I do speak on my own, it is known that it is from my own opinion. When speaking on behalf of the Sphere Alliance, I am recognized on that level, or when a Blue Avian is present, I am normally sort of a translator and speaking aloud what the Blue Avian is communicating to me telepathically. Q15. When you attended the June 5th and 7th SSB meetings, did you maintain real-time communications with the Blue Avians through telepathy, electronic or other means, simply report back, or were they monitoring or participating in these meetings directly? I was either given the information to present or a Blue Avian was present but out of phase, like the spheres, and communicating to me and letting me know what to say and how to respond. Sometimes I am just thrust into a situation and I seem to have the right things to say. The meeting with the committee of 200 inches, I was not prepared to speak and we were there to hear a proposal from them. I was disappointed that I reacted to what I perceived as a veiled threat, both because it was poor self-control and it seemed to please the person who goaded the response from me. I am not a perfect person by any means, am no guru just because I am having these contacts. I am working on becoming a more loving and forgiving person every day, as are many of those who are reading this are right now. It seemed like this person was trying to get me to react in a way that would nullify the protection I have, that I am told is present only as long as I do not negate it with my own karma. I know my weaknesses and try to stay away from temptations and pitfalls as much as possible because of this. There is too much at stake. Q16. In your detailed report of the June 9th meeting with the Committee of 200 inches, you say that it was attended by at least one person that you recognized. Can you name that person or any of the other global elites that attended this meeting? We recognize this person from the delegation meetings and from the Draco Alliance conference. These are not people you would recognize from television or the newspapers. These people are several levels above world leaders that we see on TV. These world leaders report to people that probably never meet these committee members directly. Q17. You have said that the SSP Alliance Council sent its own high-ranking representative to be present along with the support team to the June 7th and the June 9th meeting with the Committee of 200. You say that this high-ranking representative, Lieutenant Col Gonzalez, was denied a seat at the June 7th meeting. What does that mean, and why was the representative, Gonzalez, denied a seat. As stated prior, the conference has about 1/3 more attendees than it normally has. This makes the conference floor crowded. Even if there was room, I do not think they would offer another seat to an Earth-based delegate. The other members were not excited to have the regular rotating Earth delegation present at these conferences. Having a second seat given to a Sphere Alliance delegate who ended up being an Earth human certainly did not make them any happier. I do not see them providing a seat for the SSP Alliance delegate, Gonzalez, anytime soon. Q18. The annual Bilderberg Group meeting is being held from June 11 to 14, 2015 at Elfsbuchen, Austria. It does not appear coincidental that the Committee of 200 met in what appears to be an old church in a European location to make its offer only a few days before the Bilderberg Group meeting. Do you know of any connection between the Committee of 200 and the Bilderberg Group in terms of members, agenda and influence? No, I do not know of any direct connection. I would think that they report to these groups on some level. I had not made the connection to this Bilderberg Group meeting until you mentioned it. Someone else had brought up the G7 meeting that had just ended in Germany, I believe. This building was obviously a medieval-era combination fortress and cathedral of some sort. It was an extremely historical building with amazing architecture. At this point I still have no idea where we were. Q19. You say that the Committee of 200 offered to begin a limited disclosure by November 2015 if you withheld further disclosures. Given your detailed report of the June 9 meeting, that suggests that you will continue with disclosures that contribute to a full disclosure event ASAP. Do you think the committee will continue with its limited disclosure scenario for November regardless of your decision, or try to maintain the status quo? Yes, disclosures will continue. This was yet another of the cabal, Illuminati delay tactics that they have used over and over again in the last decade. They were trying to spin the situation to where they were the victims and try to manipulate the disclosure process to where their crimes against humanity were not exposed until after they had lived out their lives in freedom. This offer of theirs was not considered for one moment. There will be no cessation in disclosures. There will be no partial disclosures. The sooner they realize this and begin to work with the alliance the better. Instead, it is expected they will act like a spoiled child and try to destroy as much as possible on their way out. They refuse to admit defeat even while standing at the gallows. They are still pushing in several directions for we as they are trying to make these good faith negotiations and are using all of their former Illuminati resources to spin and control the narrative of disclosure in their favor. The cold fact is that they do not have to admit defeat to be defeated. There will be a full disclosure that will include all of their crimes against humanity. Q20. What signs should we look to from the upcoming Bilderberg meeting to gauge how the global elite are going to respond to the detailed disclosures that are now emerging about extraterrestrial life, and the secret space programs? I would look for further signs that they are going to be defiant and push for They may do a partial disclosure during the chaos of some false flags designed to kick off a third world war. This would kick the can down the road for them for the financial system being taken away from them and for control of the narrative of disclosure, or so they think. They care more about their crimes against humanity coming out in a full disclosure than they do the existence of ET life or even certain high technologies and secret space programs. It is all about self-preservation and preservation of power. There are rumors of deals being worked out with the Earth-based alliance for a partial disclosure and a new financial system that they would still have partial control of. This is not something that will be acceptable. Q21. You have said that there was an offer for a fourth meeting in early June to be conducted at an ICC facility on Mars, along with the offer of a tour of the facility to show its labor conditions. You have stated that this is likely to be a stage-managed event to disprove claims of slave labor on Mars. That suggests that the ICC is worried about future disclosures about its working conditions on Mars and elsewhere and appears to be implementing reforms. Do you believe organizations like the ICC can genuinely reform, or do they need to be placed under international oversight and control? If the ICC is making changes to living conditions, then yes, this would need to be placed under international oversight and control. This is most likely another rouse or psyop to buy more time and to get information into the pile of evidence that will benefit them later in any world courts. This proposed conference with the ICC is still being negotiated. It is fully believed by every SSP Alliance Council member to be some sort of stunt similar to what a nation like North Korea would pull. I do not fully understand the motivation of their offer of this type of meeting and setting quite yet. Q22. Finally, are the interests of other intelligent species to Earth, whales, dolphins, etc., factored in or represented in any way at SSP Alliance Council, Earth Alliance, Super Federation of Human ETs conference meetings? All life on Earth is precious and being fought for. Humanity is actively being enslaved, and there is an attempt to awaken the masses and to raise their awareness of their current situations. I have not seen any ET groups that are petitioning other groups on behalf of dolphins or whales. There are several groups that are here who have no contact with humanity at all and are only interested in ocean life. They may be working on a completely different agenda and type of confederation that is more concerned with these life forms. We do know that these beings were mostly not known about by anyone in the Sol system because of their high technology, 4Th/5Th density, and the fact that they avoid contact with all other ETs and humans. We only began to find out about them after the barriers were engaged and they became stranded here. They petitioned to leave, and their home support groups have petitioned to have them released from the outer barrier, which has been denied for all beings requesting entrance or exit.